Hallo ihr Lieben, ein großes Dankeschön geht diese Woche an Daniel, der mit seiner Lover-Mitgliedschaft in unserer Soul-Based-Community nicht nur den Podcast und unsere Arbeit finanziell unterstützt, sondern damit auch Zugang bekommt zu den monatlichen Live-Meditationen, zu aufgezeichneten Meditationen in der Soul-Based Mediathek, ja und mehr. Mehr Infos zur Soul-Based-Community und wie auch du ein Teil davon werden kannst, findest du unter community.jakob-horvath.com.
Life begins beyond the comfort zone.
Which life? Your life. Das Leben, das zu leben du und nur du hierher auf diese Erde gekommen bist. Aber was soll das überhaupt alles bedeuten? Haben wir uns dieses Leben wirklich ausgesucht? Wenn ja, warum? Was kann unser Verdienst sein im Sinne des großen Ganzen? Und wenn wir es uns nicht ausgesucht haben, worum geht's hier dann überhaupt? Warum sind wir überhaupt hier? Riesengroße Fragen übers Leben. Ich kenne kaum einen Menschen, mit dem ich lieber über diese Themen, über diese Fragen spreche, als mit Rick Pursell. Das merkt man auch daran, dass Rick bereits zum 3. Mal hier im Podcast zu Gast ist. Und das liegt jetzt nicht nur an seiner unglaublichen Lebenserfahrung und der profunden Weisheit, die er dadurch in sich verkörpert, sondern auch daran und vor allem daran, dass er einfach wirklich einer meiner allerbesten Freunde ist. Mein Soul Brother ab der ersten Minute, mein Lehrer, mein Mentor. In den Podcast-Folgen 27 und 28 spreche ich mit Rick unter anderem über seine Lebensgeschichte und wie ihn seine Erfahrung als Vietnam-Veteran zuerst fast in den Selbstmord und dann zum spirituellen Erwachen geführt hat. Hör dir auch diese Interviews unbedingt an, da sind so viele Schätze drin, die du dir daraus mitnehmen kannst. Ich verlinke dir die Folgen in den Shownotes. Rick und ich haben uns vor 3 Jahren hier in Bali kennengelernt. Und als ich im Jänner zurückgekehrt bin diesen Jahres, habe ich gleich mal die ersten 3 Wochen bei ihm und seiner Frau Lita in ihrem traumhaften Retreat Center Heaven in Bali verbracht. Jeden Morgen haben wir unser Coffee Date gehabt in seinem Büro und stundenlang miteinander über Gott und die Welt gesprochen und über den Sinn des Lebens und die größeren Zusammenhänge im Universum. Und als es mir überhaupt nicht gut gegangen ist, gleich nach meiner Ankunft, war er derjenige, der mir den Rücken gestärkt hat und mich dazu ermutigt hat, tiefer zu gehen, hineinzugehen in diese Prozesse, die sich gerade angebahnt haben. Herzlich willkommen zu 1000 First Steps, deinem Podcast für das Größte in dir. Mein Name ist Jakob Horvath und es bedeutet mir so viel, einen Teil unserer stundenlangen Gespräche und unserer Connection zueinander hier im Podcast mit dir teilen zu dürfen. Möge dieses Gespräch auch dir ein wertvoller Begleiter sein auf deiner ganz persönlichen Heldenreise. Worum geht's heute? Übers Menschsein in allen Facetten, über freien Willen und Konditionierungen, über Ängste und über den Mut, unsere eigenen Entscheidungen zu treffen, uns selbst zu entdecken als Teil einer großen Menschheitsfamilie, als die Liebe, die wir tief im Herzen sind, und über die Chancen dieser ganz besonderen Zeit in der Menschheitsgeschichte, einer Zeit des globalen Bewusstseinswandels, der kollektiven Heilung, der Zeit eines Awakenings in unser wahres Potenzial als Menschen und als spirituelle Wesen.
But now we're going through this extraordinary, unprecedented awakening as a human family, and we are raising collectively and individually our consciousness so that we are now aware, whoa, that's not me.
Wir gehen auch dem schlechten Image des Egos auf den Grund und entdecken dabei, dass es uns nicht nur schadet, sondern auch dient und wie wir es als wichtigen Lehrer auf unserer Reise sehen können. Rick lädt uns ein in seine Lebensphilosophie von Radical Surrender, Radical Acceptance und zeigt uns damit, wie wir herausfordernden Situationen mit Vertrauen und innerer Stärke begegnen können. Und bevor es jetzt gleich losgeht, habe ich hier noch ein richtig cooles Angebot für alle mutigen Männer da draußen. Ich maßschneidere nämlich gerade ein brandneues Coaching-Programm, das Männern dabei hilft, herauszufinden, wer sie wirklich sind, als Mann, als Leader, als Mensch, als Liebhaber, als Partner und warum sie hier sind. Eine 10-wöchige, powervolle und transformative Coaching-Reise, die ich aber nicht nur für euch, sondern mit euch kreieren möchte. Und deshalb vergebe ich 3 Plätze zum halben Preis an Männer, die sich ready fühlen für diese Journey und mir durch ihre kontinuierlichen Feedbacks dabei helfen wollen, eine richtig magische, kraftvolle Coaching-Reise zu entwickeln. 2 Plätze waren bereits nach wenigen Tagen fix vergeben. Und wenn du dich gerufen fühlst und gerne den 3. Platz haben möchtest, dann lass uns einander kennenlernen und gemeinsam herausfinden, ob wir ein Match sind. Und den Link zu meinem Online-Kalender findest du in den Shownotes und dort kannst du dir einen Discovery Call mit mir ausmachen. Und am 29. März findet wieder ein virtueller Men's Circle statt. Von 7.30 Uhr bis 8.30 Uhr starten wir gemeinsam in den Tag unter dem Motto Rise Together. Raum für eine gemeinsame Morgenpraxis, für authentischen Austausch unter Männern, Themen, die dir am Herzen liegen und eine Community, die dich supportet und genauso sein lässt, wie du bist. Auch hier stelle ich dir den Link in die Shownotes. So, und jetzt aber genug mit Vorspann. Lass uns eintauchen in dieses unglaublich inspirierende Gespräch und die liebevolle Weisheit von Rick Pursell, ein Mensch, für den ich so dankbar bin, ihn in meinem Leben zu haben. Schön, dass du da bist. Enjoy.
It's just so beautiful to start these conversations with a little check-in, just a few moments of silence.
Yeah.
Feeling each other, feeling your presence, my beautiful brother Rick. So happy to have you back on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. And I'm honored, Jacob, to be here in your presence, having these conversations. It's a two-way street. It's the most uplifting. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's the 3rd time, actually. 3rd time that you're on the podcast. And there's so many reasons for that.
Yes, one of them is 3rd time lucky. I might get it right this time.
This time we get it right, Rick. Come on, I hope you did your homework. No, seriously, I'm honored to be here again in this space, in your beautiful retreat center in Heaven in Bali, which we have talked about a lot in our very first interview, which is 3 years ago. Pretty much accurate on the date. It's 3 years. I can't believe what has
gone
happened.
Fast.
3 years gone fast. You look even younger than 3 years ago.
For a small fee, I can disclose my secrets of youth.
Love to hear about it. How do you feel, brother?
Right now,
Right now, how are you?
I feel exhilarated. I love our conversations that we've had. And over these last few weeks, we've had some in-depth conversations and discussions. And it's always a pleasure to be part of that. So I'm feeling really, really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's been such a joy for me to be here and spend time with you. It was one of the reasons I came back to Bali, mainly. Like 3 years ago, we just met for the very first time, and it was really as if 2 souls have kind of recognized each other from a long time ago. And a beautiful friendship has evolved and unfolded. And so spending time here with you was for me also such a healing journey, because there's something to your presence, something to your energy that I could feel 3 years ago already when we met the first time, but now even in more depth, something very profoundly healing. And I think it has a lot to do with the way you hold space for the emotions that are present for another human being. And I recognize that it's not just towards me and my emotions, but it's like towards also the guests that come here to heaven, like that open presence and that allowing to be approach to life. I feel to me it has been of tremendous help. in times of upheaval, and you have witnessed it firsthand, and you have guided me through this process. So I'm really, I'd really love to dive deeper today with you into the question of what is it really that life wants us to see in a given moment through times of challenges, upheaval and uncertainty. And especially right now, because in the past 3 years, I mean, if you look into the world, so many things have happened. Like 3 years ago, we were sitting here, it's exactly the same place, and COVID was right about to unfold and to hit the world. Yes. Exactly at that time, 3 years ago. Nobody knew where it would lead. Economic crisis, inflation, people can't afford their heating, their food anymore, wars, uncertainty, the big unknown, and fear. So first and foremost, before we go deeper into this whole big subject, I'd love to really hear your personal experience on how you experienced those past 3 years in your personal life, because I know you have been through some stuff as well. Right?
Yes, undoubtedly. Two concepts that come straight away to mind. One is radical surrender, and the other one is radical acceptance. Mm-hmm. That means accepting what is, what's unfolding. This is the reality that's occurring. And knowing at some level we create our own reality, our own lives, but the reality of what's unfolding has to be accepted. We don't necessarily condone it, we don't necessarily fight it or object to it. The reality is that there were lockdowns. The reality now is that there is a fight in Ukraine and Russia, right? There's a lot of other stuff all behind that, but these things are happening. Right now, somewhere in the world, a child is being abused by a pedophile. Right here in the world, somewhere, a child is being born. And somewhere, somebody's passing away. These are the realities. When we fight with these realities and say, I don't want this on a personal level or on a global collective level, I don't want this, we're actually pushing up against reality. And we're creating a conflict for ourselves. Right? This is self-created conflict. The fact that we're not accepting the reality that is unfolding before our eyes. Right? So there's no judgment. It's just this is the reality that's occurring. So we surrender into this and have to accept it. Right? And we take away the resistance. So if you look at this process, if we push our hands together, I feel a lot of pressure in the middle. Yeah. Right? If I take away one side, there's nothing to push against. Right? This has been my whole philosophy for years, is that I used to push against the reality. Right, and it causes pressure, build up, friction internally, right? And there becomes this disease, this imbalance. Right. Whereas I have absolutely no control over the reality that's unfolding. Yeah. It's about how much control do I have? I ask the question, how much control do I have on this? And if it's zero, I said, then there's no point in fighting it, right? What do I have control over? I have control over my thoughts. Mm-hmm. I can choose the good ones, or I can make a conscious choice. Mm-hmm. You were going to say something just now.
Yeah, I'd love to go deeper into the question on, is that really the case? Do we have that? Yes, we have that choice to make, like, you know, think good thoughts, but then the thoughts are also based on our emotions. And if we don't regulate our emotions, then the thoughts are going like wild, and the monkey mind is going all directions. But before we go deeper into this, maybe to give a background on what you've been through, because the lockdown in Bali has been huge. Like, there was no tourism at all. And Bali like lives from tourism, and like many families have been completely bankrupt.
Yes.
And you, like your retreat center here, your homestay, it's all based on tourists coming in and out, and there was no income whatsoever, if I understood that right. So from your first-hand perspective, when you say accept everything that you don't have control over, how did that look like for you in the past 3 years, and was that really that easy?
No, it was challenging. It certainly was from time to time. But when there's no resistance, there's no inner conflict going on. And we took a page out of the Balinese book. Is that the Balinese are incredibly resilient and resourceful. And we watched with our staff that we managed to subsidize our staff to get them some food on the table. But we watched their resilience to what was going on and how resourceful they were. And as a reflection, I started, how can I be resilient? You know, it's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you get up again that counts. And that's the definition of resilience. And the Balinese people were far worse off than we were, personally, and the whole of the economy was decimated. So how could we become resilient to this reality that was going on without fighting it and pushing against it? And what could we do that would be resourceful? And that's when I really poured the coals on my writing. I thought, well, I've run 7,000 hours of retreats here over the years. Why don't I make them into online courses, right? And get them out to the world? And I'd still be following my passion and purpose. Right. And why don't I ramp up my writing? It doesn't cost me anything to write, right? So I just started going through some of my old material, devising some new stuff, getting myself out the way so this stuff could come through. And so there was those two elements, resilience and resourceful, and that's what got us through.
Beautiful. This is how the Consciousness Finder was created, right? You getting up at 4 a.m, receiving your downloads from Spirit, and then just putting it out into voice messages in a small group that I was honored to be part of, receiving those messages every single day. For like how many days?
196 recordings, I did.
It's crazy. And every
morning. That was pretty well every morning.
Yeah. So when I understand you right, by accepting the facts that you were not in control of, you opened up a space internally through resilience, through getting up again and seeing the
possibility.
The possibility. Seeing the possibility that you would otherwise not be able to see if you put all your energy on the resistance.
Yes.
So, and through that, in that space, suddenly you were able to see, hey, let's get some writing done. Let's do these, the Consciousness Finder, the downloads. By the way, we will put all the links in the show notes because it's beautiful material. It has helped me a lot as well. And there's so much beautiful work that you're doing, Rick. And I'd really love for all the people listening to check it out because it's just of such great value. And a lot of the material doesn't even cost anything.
Yes.
So it's completely free. But let's get back to that idea of choose the good thoughts, because it sounds so easy, and also to my ears it sounds too easy, because I know from my own experience it's often not easy at all. Yeah. Because it feels to me, I can just speak now from my experience and also from the experience that I have with my coaches in my coaching sessions and from retreats and all of that. Sometimes we feel like trapped in our thought loops, and the thought loop, that is like the loop between emotion triggers thought, triggers emotion, triggers thought. And the underlying emotion, it seems, especially when we face the unknown, when we face uncertainty, when we face so many challenges in the external world, is fear. It's kind of like really the ground emotion that's causing all those thoughts of I don't have enough, I don't do enough, I am not enough, basically. And then when an economic crisis hits, it gets even worse, because now the prices go up, the income goes down, whatever, and the question of, oh, am I really doing enough? Am I earning enough? Am I having enough? Even gets bigger. But the underlying emotion is fear, right? Fear of what? Fear of not making it, fear of not surviving. What's your perspective on that? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Let me back up a little bit, because in my understanding, we have this physical, tangible body.
Yeah.
Then we have another body which is unseen, which is the emotional body. This is where the emotions are kept, and those emotions are driven through the body. And we have another body outside of us, which is the mental body, which is all the thoughts, which goes into the emotional body, triggers the emotions, and both those mental thoughts and emotions go into the body and can be stuck there. Right? This is the source of disease. It is dis-ease within the body. It's imbalance. And just because we can't see these bodies doesn't mean to say they're not there. I mean, where are the Wi-Fi signals right now?
Yeah.
Where's the TV and radio signals? So they exist. So it's always preceding any action is the thought. So whether we're aware of it, or whether it happens instantaneously, or whether it just emerges at a subconscious level, there is always a thought preceding the emotion. It's the thought that triggers the emotion, right? I'm not good enough, I'm under attack, whatever, this person doesn't like me, all right, or I'm never going to fit in. It's a thought which may not consciously manifest as, oh, I'm saying this to myself, but it's there all the same. And it can be instantaneous, and it could be a conditioned reaction to our childhood or whatever we learnt. Right? So then that triggers a similar theme of energy within the emotional body. So I'm not good enough, there's fear is triggered. It's nearly all based in fear.
Yeah.
Right? Fear of the unknown, fear of not being loved, fear of not being liked, fear of not fitting in, all of these things, fear of being abandoned, or, the rest of my life on my own, or fear of not having any money. Right? So fear is the big driver. Right? So now we will express those emotions, and it could be the lower level ones of blame, shame and regret, going up to it could be violence, it could be anger, it could be antagonism, it could be irritability, it could be boredom, it could be anything in that scale of emotions. And there are, within that scale, higher level ones: enthusiasm, mild interest, enthusiasm, joy, happiness, creativity. So that puts the picture together for that. Fear comes from the ego, and the ego is a bunch of cells no bigger than a peanut in the left hemisphere. This has been proven scientifically by the extraordinary work of Jill Bolte Taylor, a Harvard-trained PhD scientist, a brain scientist who had a stroke and remained conscious throughout it. And she's now written about this. Her book is called My Stroke of Insight, and an extraordinary story. And she talks about on her TED Talks that this is a small bunch of cells. And we've allowed this bunch of cells to dictate this entire body. Right? And then collectively, we get the collective ego. So what is the ego? It is a false sense of self. A false sense of self. So it's not the truth, it's a lie. So anything that comes from the ego, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to make it, you don't deserve this, right? I'm never going to find love, whatever it is, whatever the story, the narrative we're telling us, is coming from the ego. It's negative. But it's also a lie, because underlying that is something much more powerful, as we know. We'll talk about that later. So why do we have an ego? What earthly good does an ego do?
Right, maybe we can talk a little bit about that, because there's also a reason, and it's a good reason for it to exist, because without an ego, we couldn't exist as human beings on this earth, correct?
We would not be able to, we would be very different conscious beings. Right? We would no longer be under the effect of it. And I think we could survive, but historically our conscious evolution has this component of fear in it, because bringing it down to practical level, we make a choice. You look at a menu if you go to a restaurant and you look through, well, I don't particularly like Brussels sprouts, so I won't have those, but I do like this or that. So when we experience something we don't like, we now can make a choice. Do I continue with this, or do I make a different choice? And the ego is there to show us what we don't want. And it's all based in fear. And on the other hand, if I don't want this fear, what do I want? I want some happiness, I want some freedom, I want love. Right? So for me, it's the ego shows us fear, and the opposite, the heart shows us love. Right? And that's why we have an ego. It's a dualistic world we live in. So we have good and bad, hot and cold, day and night, masculine and feminine. And it's not right to call love the good part and this is bad part, because that's just a judgment. But it's just there to show us what we don't want, so we can now make a different choice.
I'd love to jump into this a little bit more, to maybe broaden the understanding of ego a little bit, so that people, I'm not necessarily like against that, what you just said. I just feel like the ego has a very, very, very bad image in, especially like modern spirituality. Everyone talks about like the ego is the enemy, like Ryan Holiday talks about in his book, and the ego is so bad. But after all, if we wouldn't have an ego, meaning a sense of self, be that right or wrong, doesn't matter for like being in a 3D reality, as a human being in this body, with this mind, with your thoughts, with your interests, your passions, everything that makes you, your personality, the things that you've learned, the things that you haven't learned, things that you like, things that you dislike, like in my understanding, that all is like part of that sense of self, that ego that separates me from other human beings. And now, is it really the ego the problem, or is my over-identification with the ego the problem, so that I only see myself as being this separate self, and not being infinitely more than that, connected to everyone and everything? And maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, what that could mean in everyday life, and how we can like dissolve this, like being over-identified with my ego, with my fears, with my thoughts, and I feel like, to me at least, in my experience, that is what makes it the false sense of self, because I only believe I am that. But also, it doesn't really sound true to me to just say I am nothing of that at all, because then resistance comes into play, and I don't want that ego, and I want to push it away, and I need to transform it and transcend it and heal it and all of that. And then, at least in my experience, a lot of resistance came up as well.
Yes.
Which is then kind of the opposite than we want to go through, right?
Exactly.
So
how did that work out for you?
Yes. How would you reflect on this thought? Does that resonate at all?
Yeah, it does. Excellent question. From a personal aspect, before we go there, the yin-yang symbol is the perfect metaphor for the ego. It has a dark side with a dot of white, and it has a white side with a dot of black. Right? And it's encompassed in a circle. Only when we bring these two sides together will we be whole. Right? And our society is hell-bent in not going into that shadow side. Yeah. I don't want that. I want to feel good all the time. Yeah. All right? And that is orchestrated by social media, American Idol, you name it, work, sex, any distraction from going in and looking at that shadow side. So what we have here is a coin.
Yeah.
One coin, two sides.
Uh-huh.
Right? This is the ego. And we need...
The coin is the ego.
The coin is the ego,
Uh-huh.
right? It has two sides to it, but it's only one.
Yes.
So the triune of ego and love, or fear and love, is oneness. This is one whole person. So personally, when my ego comes up, it arises. I can sense it, I can feel it. I'm aware of the energy of fear arising, and it is my best friend. It's my teacher, the most extraordinary teacher I've ever had. Right? And when it comes up, I say, "Oh, good morning, ego. What have you got for me this morning?" Right? And it says, "Oh, same old, Rick. It's just fear." Oh, can you do any better than that? Right? But thank you. You've now given me a choice. Do I come down the path of fear with you, or do I make another choice? Do I go down the path of love from the heart?
Right.
And there it is in that nutshell. There's our free will. We can choose which path we go down. And I believe that ultimately we'll all swing and integrate these two parts so that we become whole. Right? And how would we have found that? There's the separateness, the two sides. Right? It is through separateness we find the whole, the triune. All of the opposites, the duality of this three-dimensional world, all of those have a central triune. That is oneness. That is who we are at the core, not separate from ourselves, from these bodies, from our mind, from our emotions, from nature, from humanity, from religions, from financial institutions. We're all part of this one big game, as one human family. If you take your DNA and you go back, half from mum and half from dad, going back, half from granddad, back and back and back. It's been suggested if we go back enough generations, we will already be related to over 1 million people.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think everyone can understand that this is a much more fulfilling way to live, and also we could experience so much more love and abundance and care for each other and respect and like all that we long for in our hearts. And yet I feel so much of that is conditioned. We haven't signed up for that. Really.
Conditioned?
Yeah, it's like we have been born and raised into a world where these things are conditioned, and I would love for you to maybe reflect on that a little bit, why that is. Like when we talk about like the fear of not being good enough, I think one of the most common fears of most people out there. Why is that? Why are we conditioned to believe that we are not good enough? And why is it so hard to recognize ourselves in our value and in our worth?
Excellent. We have been conditioned. We learn everything we need to know about conflict resolution between 0 and 7 years by watching the two adults. If there are two there, can be one, or could be grandparents, or
could be none,
extended family, or just an orphan wandering the streets.
Yeah.
But we watch and observe as a young person, how does those people, and it's not a conscious thought, but how does dad deal with conflict? How does mum deal with conflict? Right? We watch that behavior because we can't enunciate, and we don't have an intelligent mind sufficiently mature to be able to see through what's going on, but we just observe the behaviors. And then we make an unconscious choice. Who do I want to be? Who looks like they're surviving best? Well, dad resolves conflict by shouting, right, and getting really angry. And mum goes quiet. She wants to keep the peace from the family, keep the peace and harmony. So she kowtows to him in order to protect the family. This is a hypothetical case, right? So it looks like Dad's surviving the best because when he says jump, we all jump, right? And Mum's compliant to him. So it looks like I'll choose to be like my father.
I get angry in conflict.
Now we've got a learnt conditioned reaction, not a response, a reaction. And every conflict we come at, we'll drag this up almost like a hypnotic command that we act out. Or it could be Mum and say, I want to be like Mum. She keeps the peace. She keeps the harmony in the house. But at the expense of her own power. So she's disempowered. So now I go through life, well, I need to keep the peace and the harmony. So now I become a people pleaser, right? I'm just whatever you want, right? I don't want to make any waves, right? So I'll just keep the peace and harmony. And now I'm usurping all of my power and becoming powerless. I've been there, right? So that's what happens with the conditioning. And then we play this out in our lives until we recognize, hey, I'm not being myself, I'm being my dad. Or I'm not being myself, I'm being my mum. Or I'm being both of them. All right? So I've divested my own sovereignty, my own character, my own personality to be play acting these roles whenever the stimulus occurs. I'll play it out.
Yeah.
And it's conditioned. It's a conditioned reaction.
Right. And it's not, and I think this is an important point, like, it's not something that our parents did out of a bad intention because they wanted us to, condition us in a way that we don't believe in ourselves. In fact, they have been hurt in their childhood, most probably. They have been abandoned or experienced fear and all of that. And that was their learned reaction, but they haven't had the chance to resolve that yet.
Exactly.
And not even now in their adult lives, having their own kids, they still running those old childhood patterns because they haven't had the chance yet, or the awareness, or the consciousness, or the guidance to heal that. And I feel this is the point in history where we human beings, the level of awareness, the level of consciousness throughout the human family has risen to a level where more and more of us, and even really young people, are able at a very young age to recognize, hey, this is not exactly what you just said. This is not me. This is my dad.
Yes.
In me, or this is my dad's reaction in me. And then they ask the question, where did I experience that for the first time?
Where did I learn it?
Where did I learn it? Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And I feel this is the doorstep into becoming more your true self.
Yes.
Who you really are, and breaking free from the conditioned patterns.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. Where did I learn it from? And where did Mum and Dad learn it from? And where did Grandpa and Grandma learn it from? It's generational.
Many generations.
It's generational.
Most probably.
So our poor parents, that's not a very nice expression, but our parents are doing the best they can with what they've got, and they didn't have much conscious parenting, right? So they will just play out this whole thing. But now we're going through this extraordinary, unprecedented awakening as a human family, and we are raising collectively and individually our consciousness so that we are now aware, way, that's not me. I saw it in my parents, but they were just playing out the program as well, generation and generation. So now we have an opportunity in this generation to break the mold. I'm not going to be playing that out. When I have children, I'm not going to be playing out the same thing, right? With capital punishment and standing in the corner at school with a dunce's cap on, or being locked in your room, or punishing this or that. That was the old parenting style, and parents were doing the best they could with what they had. Right? So we are now have the opportunity to break all those molds from generation and generations ago, and do something different. And this is where we see that the ego has attached to this behavior, right? Because it serves it, right? If you get angry and you get your way, well, that worked, right? I'll do more of that.
And you
right?
see it everywhere in the world.
You
how
see
that
it
works.
being played out to a global war. We've had 2 major wars in this world, world wars. And that's just the pain and suffering that people, the trauma that people have been through, and they're just projecting it. It's a projection.
And you would know, you have served in the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And we won't go deeper into this. For those interested in your personal story, there's like a whole podcast episode on how you survived that, both physically and spiritually.
Yeah.
But it really reminds me of something that really I realized, I feel in its depth only recently, also through your help. This is why I want to bring it up, and I know it's kind of it's a vulnerable thing to say in a podcast interview, but I feel it adds value to the conversation from my own experience, because when I came to Bali and you witnessed it firsthand, I wanted to not be here. I wanted to run away. My ego was telling me, you don't belong here, it's raining all the time, the traffic is crazy, there are so many Russians, like all the things, But then looking deeper into it, why is that? What is it that is playing out here? It's a pattern. It's a conditioned pattern that was playing out of me running away once it gets uncomfortable, once emotions come up that want to be seen and felt. And my go-to strategy, like most of my life, was run away. Go through the back door, distract myself through substances, alcohol, sex at times, you name it, parties, just distracting and trying to get away from these uncomfortable emotions. And what really has, and the Tantra retreat, the men's retreat that I've been on, has really shown me a lot about what the pattern was actually, has brought my awareness to that. Because in my childhood, I learned at some point it was not safe to feel my emotions and to express my emotions. I was getting in a lot of trouble as a child when I got too angry, or when I got, I didn't know what to do with those emotions. I remember myself at some point like throwing chairs through the classroom and doing like crazy things sometimes, because I haven't just never learned how to, in a healthy way, experience my emotions.
Yeah.
That was why I got scared of my emotions myself and tried to suppress them, tried to ignore them, distract myself from them. And up until today, and I'm 36 now, turning 37 now, soon, I feel like, wow, like it's probably only now that I came to a full understanding, or let's say to a deeper understanding. You never know what fullness means in that sense, right? Where this is going to lead. But to a much deeper understanding of who I am in my wholeness, in my past, in my present, in my potential for the future. And it just feels so relieving, and it feels so empowering as well to take back my power, to step into this process, step into these emotions, feel it all, and become whole in that sense, that I don't ignore and resist those emotions anymore, but actually really know, okay, you're here as well, you're part of me, this is the past, this is my story, and I'm at peace. And this all, and that's kind of the bottom line of why I'm sharing this, I feel I have become to terms, I have to come to terms, and I've come to feel a sense of peace when I think about my past, and I'm not blaming anyone anymore. And this is just such a beautiful feeling,
isn't it? And it took courage, bravery and courage to turn and face the demons. And that's one of the heart values, is courage, bravery and courage, to be able to step outside of your comfort zone, to to be determined not to be distracted right? Not to run away. Because when we run away, it's like a ball and chain. It follows us. As fast as we run, it follows us afterwards.
Yeah.
So at some time we need to stop. We will stop, as you have done, and say, I can't do this anymore. It's not working for a start, because this damn ball keeps following me. So I need to stop, right? And I need to unshackle myself from this burden. Right? And that is turning and facing the shadow side. Turning and facing these low-level emotions, these negative thoughts. And all of that is coming from the ego, which is a false sense of self. So it's a complete lie. It's face this lie that I've been telling myself all along, that I'm not good enough. And in fact, I am an infinite being animating this body. Right? This consciousness that has no beginning and ending is that which occupies and animates this body. And now we're saying, oh, but I'm not good enough. It's pathetic, isn't it? In a way. Yeah. But this is the conditioning, and the blueprint seems to be, we have to have this, we have to experience this separateness, this duality, this finding out what I don't want in order to know what I do want.
Right.
And this is the question. Every time we arrive in our life, I don't want this job, I don't want this relationship, I don't want this food, I'm sick of this car breaking down. Then what do I want? Right. And now we're at a point where we open the door of possibility. This consciousness could also be called the field of potential. That is that it's like a battery, right? A battery on its own does nothing until you clip on the positive and negative terminal, and then you can get light from it. So the potential field has everything and nothing in it until we manifest it into this physical world. And now we've got a choice of what we want to manifest. More fear, more love. It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a choice away.
Yes.
And it starts with the thought.
Yes. And it takes, the thought is kind of, it all starts, like in the beginning there's the thought, right? But then it also needs the positive and the negative charge as a battery. A battery doesn't function if you don't have the polarity of positive and negative.
Exactly.
So in order to know which way we want to go, we need to have experienced the opposite.
Exactly.
If I understand you correctly.
Call it the negative.
The negative, whatever you want to call it. We need to experience the fear in order to know that we want to head towards love. And we only know how love really feels when we once experienced its opposite.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And without experiencing your shadows, you don't know what the light is looking like.
Yeah.
So without having a sense of self, a sense of like that false self, let's call it the ego, we need it. Like it's serving us actually. It's adding value to our journeys by showing us a part of ourselves that is the opposite from the potential that's also inside of us. And just the mere thought of that feels so empowering, I feel. Because we don't need to push anything away. We don't need to resist anything. We can just include it in our journeys and now ask the question, what is this here to teach me? It was one of the questions that has guided me a lot through this process of the past weeks, months, and also with your guidance. In our like hour-long conversations we had here, reflecting, like I don't know how many tears were running down my cheeks in those conversations. And one of the questions that I kept asking myself was actually two questions. It was the first question was, what is this here to teach me? So it allowed me to stay open and curious and accept it. What is this here to teach me? And the second question is, what would love do right now?
Thank you, Neil Donald Walsh.
Yes, what would love do right now?
Yeah. And where's the only place the answer can come from is from your heart, not from your head. And that's the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell talks about, from the head to the heart.
The longest journey that a human being can undertake. Huh?
And not only the longest, but the hardest one, the most challenging one.
Yeah. Because
this is so deeply ingrained in us. We've come to believe that the ego is who we are. Oh, it's just human to be like that. we'll never stop wars, it's just human. No, we've got another choice here. Right? So the whole belief system, we have to change what we believe, firstly about ourselves, and then what we believe about the world.
Yeah.
And this is the path of truth. Basically, we're uncovering the truth about our existence, the meaning of life. What are we here for? What is our personal purpose? What is my passion? All of it. We're truth seekers. Right? This is why I get called a conspiracy theorist, right? And I correct people and say, no, I'm seeking the truth. Right? It has a very different connotation.
Yes. And a very different intention too.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are always often speaking and writing about the wholeness navigator as kind of an internal navigation instrument that we all have inside of us that guides us towards truth. Can you speak a little bit about the wholeness navigator, what it is, and how we can actually make use of that on our own personal and spiritual journeys?
Reflect back on, most of us have seen the Matrix series, the Matrix movie, all right? Red pill and blue pill. And Neo is trying to get out of is experiencing both sides, and they're trying to exit the Matrix. So part of the Matrix is like a mind control program. It has finances involved in it, where we're always trying, we can never get enough money, and money has been a very dictatorial aspect of our lives. And some religions, some spiritual aspects. You put all that together and it's like a program called the human mind system. And it was a bit of a shock to me, but the Wholeness Navigator is embedded in that. And the Wholeness Navigator brings us to question about the meaning of life and who am I in this grand scheme of things. It is designed to give us a glimpse of what's outside of the matrix, right? Although it's still within the matrix. Right? But you could wrongly call it the soul or the spirit, that which lies inside. It is different from the pure, unabated fear. There's an inkling of truth about it that will, if we latch onto it and follow it to a certain degree, it will take us to the edge of the matrix, and then we'll be able to step outside into our full sovereignty. So for me, and I used it in my writing, for me it was just a wonderful, and every day I give part of my gratitude process. I thank the Wholeness Navigator for being an amazing stepping stone that could allow me to exit from this human mind system, this matrix, and step more and more into my sovereignty. If it hadn't have been there, I would just have been embroiled in all of the fear and all of the program of this. So it is possible to step out of that.
Yeah.
More and more people are doing so.
How can we, maybe to make it a little bit more accessible for people listening, how can we access this Wholeness Navigator? How is it showing up in our everyday life? How can we feel it? How can we see it? How do I know that's the Wholeness Navigator speaking to me and not just fear?
Let's call it the positive terminal on the battery. Right? And seek that. What is good, wholesome, what is healthy, what is life-enhancing, what is well-being, what is my heart tell me, what is my passion in life. All the positivity of life is a symbolic of the Wholeness Navigator. Its whole job is rather like the GPS on the car, on the handphone. In 600 meters, turn left, right? The Wholeness Navigator is guiding us to the edge of the matrix. Right? Do this. It's intuitive. It's innate knowingness. So we need to trust our intuition. When we feel something is right, and feel it, not think it necessarily, but feel this feels right. All right? And this step may lead you to fear, but it's a step in the right direction, right? It's not just going to open the doors to everything's going to be blissful and euphoric and joyful. It's going to lead us progressively to the edge of the matrix. And then we can say, thank you. Thank you, Wholeness Navigator, for these little guidances, these little intuitive hits, these little downloads perhaps, whatever we want to label it. And it's showing us how to become more whole and not separate. But it's still within this human mind complex. And from there, it's not such a big jump to leap outside.
And this human mind complex, I mean, it's obviously a very, very broad concept and too much to really go deep into right now. But I think, and that's something that comes up for people a lot, is yes, there is this inner sense of wholeness, of like, let's move towards our human potential, let's move towards a more beautiful world, let's move towards the unfolding of what we are really here for in this, wholeness. But then there's also fear of leaving the known, leaving the certainty and the sense of control that we have over our lives within this human mind system, as you call it. Like, we do have our societies, and yes, there is a lot going insanely wrong with them, but they also give us a sense of safety and stability, and we have our jobs, and it's, there's structure, and it's like organized lives, and we know we show up at work at this time and we go home at this time, and then in the beginning of the month we have our paycheck and we can afford holidays. And there is also some groundedness in it, right? There is some, it might be boring for many people. It might be that they are not really unfolding their true potential because they're just doing what everyone's doing, or they're doing what they have been conditioned to do and not really asking those bigger questions. But I feel what many people are scared of is really stepping out of that comfort zone, searching for the unknown, really giving themselves to exploring the possibilities of life, knowing that might be fucking painful at times, that it might be challenging, it might throw you out of your known world completely. So what would you tell them, people who might be curious, or even are on their journeys already, but still feel like this is so freaking scary?
And it is. My whole philosophy has changed to life begins beyond the comfort zone. Right? So we can embroil ourselves in this comfort with certainty and knowingness and what we think we have control over. Right? But is it satisfying? Is it uplifting us? Is it evolving our conscious awareness? Is it being of value to society? Is it doing goodwill? Is it doing this or that? And if you're comfortable that it's not, then stay there, right? But one day you'll have had enough. You're experiencing what you really don't want because there's a fire, there's a spark inside you that wants to develop into a raging bushfire. We all have it, right? But if we're just happy to just tend this little spark, then so be it, right? Nobody's going to judge you for it. There will be judgment.
Hopefully.
But that's where that person is in terms of awareness and consciousness. And it's a reflection, what is reflected in that is behavior. So the less conscious we are, the less aware we are, the more unintelligent behaviors we will take, and the more unwise behaviors. This is really the crux of it, because we can see these behaviors. Why do I keep drinking in excess? Because I feel comfortable and I don't have to think about the pain and the trauma I'm carrying around. Why do I stay in this job that I hate and the boss? Because I'm afraid of stepping out and doing something different, right? So we come to realize that it's all about fear, right? It's about fear. I'm afraid to step out of my comfort zone. And then one day we will, right? And then we'll realize, God, that was scary, right? I'm not sure I want to do that again in a hurry, but you will, all right?
Yeah. The leap of faith.
It's a leap of faith. It's a leap into the unknown. This is the radical surrender, right? This is the radical acceptance that this is not working for me. I must try something else.
Even though I don't know what that else might be.
Can you tell me with 100% certainty what's going to happen at 4 o'clock this afternoon?
No idea.
No.
I can tell you what I plan to do.
That's how I spend my day. I don't plan.
Yeah.
I have dreams and aspirations, but I don't plan anything. I plan as I go along.
I have a coaching session at 4, and I plan to show up in my,
But if there's a massive earthquake here today,
or if
you might have to just postpone it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we don't know the future,
Don't know.
and we can't change anything in the past. So what's the only moment that matters? This precious one now. And then what do we want to put into it? Fear or love? It's a no-brainer. We have free will of choice here.
Yes.
So,
and then when you put love into this present moment, you realize you are carried, you are held by this moment.
yes,
There's nothing inherently wrong with this moment. And every problem that shows up can be solved, but only in the present moment. You cannot solve the problem in the future when it hasn't even arrived yet.
yes, yeah.
And
Let me just jump in there.
Yes, please.
If it's come from the ego, right, you cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. So you see the ego is creating a lot of our problems, and now we're going back into there to try and resolve it. We have to do something different. We have to come in here to resolve that.
in here, in
Go
the
ahead.
present moment, and taking that leap of faith. And that's exactly also, you quoted Joseph Campbell with the hero's journey. That leap of faith, that trust into the unknown, that is exactly what makes you embark on that hero's journey. It makes you go out of your known world and your familiar territory, and then start exploring and knowing, trusting into life, trusting into yourself as well, and your abilities, your creativity to solve problems when they arise.
Yes.
And then just take it one step at a time, and you might be surprised by the miracles and wonders of life. What else is there?
Absolutely. What is possible? If Sir Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing didn't step out of their comfort zone, nobody would have conquered Everest. It takes someone to do that. The first person, not Yuri Gagarin, Yuri somebody or other, was the first Russian astronaut, right? Marathon runners, Wim Hof swimming under the ice. These are all people that step out of their comfort zone and break the ground for possibilities. The 4-minute mile, when I was a kid, the 4-minute mile was the stable datum. Nobody had cracked it. Now it's a joke that we couldn't run faster.
Yeah.
Right? So it takes that pioneering spirit, and to do that you need courage.
Yeah.
And you need to understand that I'm going to feel discomfort here. I'm standing on very shaky ground, right? But this will lead to something better for me. Even if you fall down and break your leg, all right?
Yeah.
And that might be the universe saying, listen, you're pushing this training way too hard. I'm going to slow you down a little bit while you just get into balance. There seems to be a reason behind everything.
Yeah.
And how this whole thing is unfolding,
like a grand,
this awakening.
like a grand design behind it. Beautiful. Yeah, and also, like, it doesn't have to be that, some crazy endeavors like conquering Everest, or like being the fastest runner on Earth, or like swimming under the ice. It can be like this tiny, sometimes big even, steps out of the comfort zone to just really face your own emotions in daily life. Just bringing up the courage for yourself to show up and owning what's there, owning your emotions, facing it, working with it, dealing with it, can be a huge step out of the comfort zone. And I feel it's important to not just, you know, see, okay, here are the big heroes, they have conquered great mountains, but I'm not that kind of person. No, everyone has that hero inside of us. That's the hero's journey, right?
It is. Yeah. And it's one step. You know all about first steps. The first small step outside of your comfort zone. And it might be a guy's drinking in excess, right? And he says, I'm going to only have a drink on the weekend and I'm going to moderate it. And then one day he might go to Alcoholics Anonymous and say, my name is Bill Jones, I'm an alcoholic. That takes courage. It takes enormous courage. So we don't all have to be heroes and heroines. We can just do small random acts of kindness. Holding the door for somebody, right? Helping a little old lady with a shopping trolley that's got one of those wheels. Why do I always get those? Helping somebody across the road.
Yeah.
Little tiny acts of joyous behavior, which makes you feel good, and you want to do more of it. You've just stepped out of the comfort zone. Is all about I, me, mine. Right? This is what about me? This is mine, and I want. That's the ego, right? And it keeps us in the comfort, our comfort zone. Us and we is about projecting what can we achieve, what can us as a collective human family, what can we change? And doing one small step towards that. Easy, squeezy. We can manage that first step. And if it's really scary, step back in there, back into the comfort zone, and muster up some more courage. I'm going to wait. Here we go today.
Let's go back to the training camp.
Yep. And it's all designed to lead us to becoming more conscious and aware.
And to wrap up this and to end it in a like heartfelt way, Rick, because you are such a dear brother to me, and I know from my own experience, and I feel like sharing this with our audience, that this is not just words coming out of your mouth that sound beautiful, and you know, this is like heartfelt experience, and I felt that being in your presence, you guiding me on my healing journey in such a beautiful, compassionate, powerful, strong way, living exactly that. And you asked me at some point, first you said, if you commit to your journey, no, how did you say that? You said, if you decide to stay, I commit to your journey. That's what was when you said, when I was considering leaving Bali, you know, and then you said, and why would I do that? And then the answer was, because there is no other. When you heal, I heal.
Yeah.
When I heal, you heal. And this, I feel, is coming from such a deep, embodied, integrated experience that just makes it all more worthwhile, powerful, and inspiring to me.
Thank you. Of course, all I'm doing is holding up a mirror. You're seeing yourself. You're seeing yourself.
Wow. Thank you so much, brother, for being in my life and for being on this podcast for the third time, sharing your wisdom, your experience.
Thank you.
Deeply appreciate you.
It's a pleasure shared, and look forward to number 4, if I'm invited.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I love you, brother.
I love you too.
What a conversation. Ach, ich fühle mich so erfüllt nach diesem Gespräch. Ich hoffe, du fühlst dich ähnlich. Wenn du mit Rick und seiner Energie in Resonanz bist, dann besuche ihn online auf rickpursell.com. Den Link stelle ich dir natürlich in die Shownotes. Dort gibt Rick unglaublich viel wertvollen Content kostenlos her. Du findest dort zum Beispiel jede Menge E-Books, seinen wöchentlichen Blog, Oracle of Consciousness, Online-Kurse und mehr. Und ich hoffe sehr, dass dich dieses Gespräch inspiriert hat und du dir den einen oder anderen wertvollen Impuls für deine Journey durchs Leben mitgenommen hast. Lass mir sehr gerne deine Gedanken auf Instagram da, unter dem Post zur Folge @jakob.horvath. Schreib mir dort sehr gerne deine Takeaways. Ich freue mich, von dir zu lesen. Antworte dort natürlich auch immer persönlich auf eure Kommentare. Und wenn du mir noch einen Riesengefallen tun möchtest, dann schreibe eine 5-Sterne-Rezension auf iTunes oder im Podcast-Player deiner Wahl. Damit hilfst du mir sehr, den Podcast bekannter zu machen. Und wenn du es fühlst, teile diese Folge mit Freunden. Lass uns gemeinsam dazu beitragen, dass wir als Menschheitsfamilie miteinander und füreinander wachsen und gedeihen. There's so much more to come. Und wenn du meine Arbeit gerne direkt unterstützen möchtest, dann kannst du mich einmal im Monat umgerechnet auf einen Cappuccino mit Hafermilch einladen. Damit finanziere ich Software für den Podcast, technisches Equipment und mehr. Alle Infos dazu findest du auf community.jakobhorvath.com. Und jetzt wünsche ich dir einen wunderschönen Morgen, Tag, Abend, wo auch immer du gerade bist. May you be happy, peaceful and free. May all beings be happy, peaceful and free. Mit viel Liebe von mir zu dir, dein Jakob.